they thought it was a simple abduction, Earth sent its darkest legend. The Zephyrian High Council had studied thousands of species across the galaxy. They had cataloged their strengths, weaknesses, and breaking points with scientific precision. Humans, they concluded, were unremarkable, fragile bipeds with short lifespans and primitive technology. When they needed test subjects for their neural experiments, Earth seemed like the perfect hunting ground. They were wrong. What they didn't know was that among the 7 billion humans they dismissed as weak, there walked legends that even other humans feared to name. And when the Zephyrians took the wrong person from a quiet street in Prague, they didn't just kidnap a human. They awakened something that had been sleeping in the shadows of Earth for decades, something that governments whispered about in classified files marked with a single name that made seasoned soldiers pale. The aliens thought they were conducting a simple abduction. Earth was about to teach them the difference between a sheep and a wolf. The rain fell steadily on the cobblestone streets of Prague's old quarter, each drop catching the amber glow of the streetlights like tiny fragments of gold. Dr. Elena Vasquez pulled her coat tighter as she walked from the university library, her mind still processing the archaeological texts she'd been reviewing. Ancient civilizations, lost technologies, forgotten wars. Her specialty was piecing together the puzzles of the past. But tonight she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Above the cloud cover, invisible to human eyes, the Zephyrian research vessel Dominion's Edge maintained its position. Commander Thex. 9 studied the bioreadings displayed on his neural interface, his 6-fingered hands dancing across the holographic controls with practiced efficiency. The human female below matched their specifications perfectly. Educated, isolated, and most importantly, alone. Target confirmed. Thex. 9. Transmitted to his science officer, Kale. 7. Initiating extraction protocol. Elena paused at the corner of Neradova Street, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The street was empty except for the distant sound of a tram rattling through the night. She reached into her purse for her phone, intending to call a taxi, when the world suddenly went white. The extraction beam enveloped her in a cocoon of energy, lifting her gently into the air as the cobblestones fell away beneath her feet. Elena's last conscious thought before the neural dampeners took effect was a fragment from one of the texts she'd been reading. Something about ancient warriors who never truly died, only waited. Aboard the Dominion's Edge, Elena's unconscious form materialized in the specimen bay. Kale. 7 performed the standard bioscans while Thex. 9 observed through the reinforced viewing portal. Excellent physical condition. Kale. 7 reported, his translator converting his clicking speech into standard galactic. Neural pathways are complex but within expected parameters for the species. She should provide valuable data for our consciousness transfer experiments. Good, Thex. 9 replied, already moving toward the bridge. Place her in containment cell 7 and begin preliminary scans. We have 6 more specimens to collect before returning to the homeworld. What neither alien realized was that Elena Vasquez was not just any human. Hidden in her medical records, buried beneath layers of classified encryption, was a single notation that would have changed everything. Next of kin. Marcus Vasquez. Status. Active. Classification level. Black. Marcus Vasquez sat in his apartment in Berlin, nursing a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. The television droned in the background, some late-night news program discussing political tensions in Eastern Europe. At 53, he looked like any other middle-aged man. Average height, braying hair, the kind of person who could disappear into a crowd without anyone noticing. But Marcus Vasquez was not average, and he had spent 30 years making sure very few people knew the truth. His phone rang. Marcus? The voice belonged to Dr. Sarah Chen, Elena's research partner at Charles University. I'm sorry to call so late, but Elena never came home. She was supposed to meet me for breakfast this morning, but she's not answering her phone. Her landlord says her bed wasn't slept in. Marcus set down his coffee, his expression unchanged. When did you last see her? Yesterday evening at the library. She was working on the Moravian excavation reports. Marcus, I'm worried. This isn't like Elena. I'm sure she's fine, Marcus said calmly. Sometimes research takes longer than expected. I'll make some calls. After hanging up, Marcus sat in silence for 30 minutes. He made no calls. Instead, he opened his laptop and accessed a series of encrypted servers that technically didn't exist. What he found made his blood run cold. Electromagnetic anomalies over Prague at 11:47 p.m. Localized gravitational disturbances. Energy signatures that match no known human technology. And Elena's phone. Found abandoned on Neradova Street with no signs of struggle. Marcus closed the laptop and walked to his bedroom closet. Behind his civilian clothes, in a space hidden by false panels, hung items he hadn't touched in 15 years. Black tactical gear, weapons that were works of art, and a mask featureless, matte black with eye slits that seemed to swallow light. The world knew him by many names in whispered intelligence briefings. The Shadow, the Berlin Ghost, Necht. But his true designation was simpler, more terrifying in its bureaucratic banality. Operative Zero. Zero because that's how many of his targets had ever escaped. Zero because that's how many governments officially acknowledged his existence. Zero because that's how much mercy he showed to those who threatened his family. Marcus dressed methodically, each piece of equipment finding its designated place with muscle memory that hadn't faded despite the years. The mask went on last, transforming him from a tired middle-aged man into something that had haunted the nightmares of international criminals for 3 decades. He activated a communication device that had been dormant for 15 years. "This is Zero," he said into the encrypted channel. "I'm reactivating my authorization codes. I need a full tactical briefing on extraterrestrial contact protocols." The voice that answered belonged to Director Harrison of the Special Activities Division, a man who had hoped he would never receive this call. "Marcus, Jesus Christ, we thought you were retired. My sister has been taken." The line went quiet for a long moment. Harrison understood the implications immediately. The world's most dangerous man was coming out of retirement and his target wasn't human. "What do you need?" Harrison asked. "Everything." On the Dominion's edge, Elena began to wake up. The containment cell was clean, sterile, and obviously alien in design. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint bioluminescence, and the air had a metallic taste that made her gag. She tried to remember how she had gotten here, but her memories were fuzzy, fragmented. "Subject is regaining consciousness, KL. 7 observed from the monitoring station." Beginning cognitive baseline assessment. Elena pressed her hand against what she hoped was a wall. The surface was smooth, warm to the touch, and completely seamless. No door, no windows, nothing that suggested a way out. Panic began to set in as the reality of her situation became clear. "Can you understand me?" a voice asked in perfect English. Elena spun around but saw no one. The voice seemed to come from the walls themselves. "Where am I?" she demanded, forcing herself to sound stronger than she felt. "You are aboard a research vessel of the Zephyrian Scientific Collective," the voice replied. "I am Kale, 7, Chief Xenobiologist. You have been selected to participate in a series of experiments that will contribute to our understanding of human consciousness." "Experiments?" Elena's voice cracked. "You can't just take people. There are laws, treaties. Human laws do not apply beyond your solar system, Kale," 7 interrupted. "You should consider it an honor. Your sacrifice will advance science." Elena sank to the floor, the full weight of her situation crushing down on her. She was alone, light years from home, at the mercy of beings who saw her as nothing more than a lab rat. But as despair threatened to overwhelm her, she remembered something Marcus had told her years ago, back when their parents died and he became her guardian. "No matter how dark things get, Elena, you're never alone. Family doesn't abandon family. Ever." She held on to that memory like a lifeline, not knowing that at that very moment her brother was preparing for a war that would span the galaxy. In his Berlin apartment, Marcus finished loading his equipment into a specialized case. Each weapon was a masterpiece of engineering, some purchased through black market channels, others custom-built by craftsmen who understood that their clients' work required tools that could end lives with surgical precision. Director Harrison's briefing had been enlightening. Governments worldwide had been tracking unidentified objects for decades, but this was the first confirmed abduction. The energy signatures matched theoretical models for exotic matter manipulation, suggesting technology centuries ahead of human capability. It didn't matter. Marcus had built his reputation by doing impossible things, infiltrating terrorist cells, eliminating war criminals who thought themselves untouchable, disappearing government officials who had forgotten which side they served. Alien technology was just another variable in an equation he had been solving for 30 years. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Harrison. "Transport leaves Tempelhof in 2 hours. Destination, Nevada." "Good hunting, Zero." Marcus allowed himself a rare smile beneath the mask. The aliens had made a simple mistake. They had assumed that all humans were sheep. They were about to learn that sheep were protected by wolves, and some wolves had been hunting in the dark for so long that they had become something more dangerous than their prey could imagine. As he left his apartment for what might be the last time, Marcus made a silent promise to his sister. Elena would come home, even if he had to tear apart the galaxy to make it happen. On the Dominion's edge, Vex 9 reviewed the mission parameters one final time. 6 more abductions to complete their quota, then a return to Zephyr Prime with specimens that would advance their consciousness transfer technology by decades. The humans would never even know their people were gone. It was, he thought, a perfect plan. He had no way of knowing that at that moment, deep in the Nevada desert, the most classified facility on Earth, scientists were dusting off theoretical weapons that had never been tested. Military leaders were reviewing contingency plans that had been considered science fiction. And in a briefing room that officially didn't exist, a man in a black mask was studying star charts and planning the first interstellar assassination in human history.
The Zephyrians thought they were conducting a simple abduction.
They were about to discover that they had just declared war on Earth's darkest legend. The Nevada facility existed in the space between official acknowledgement and plausible deniability. Built into the mountains, 70 miles north of Las Vegas, Area 52 made its more famous cousin look like a tourist attraction. Here, in laboratories carved from solid rock, humanity's most brilliant minds worked on projects that wouldn't see daylight for decades. Dr. Amanda Torres had been running the Theoretical Weapons Division for 8 years, but she had never received a call like this one. Director Harrison's message had been brief. Prep the Erebus package. Full authorization. We have a zero situation. The Erebus package. Amanda hadn't thought about that particular nightmare in years. She made her way through corridors that required 6 different biometric scans, past laboratories where physicists played with forces that could crack planets. The Erebus lab was at the facility's deepest level, behind blast doors that could withstand a nuclear strike. Inside, she found her team already assembled. Dr. James Okafor looked up from a holographic display showing energy calculations that made her head hurt. "Amanda," he said, his Nigerian accent thick with excitement and terror. "I can't believe they're actually authorizing this. The theoretical yield alone. How long do we have?" Amanda interrupted. "Transport arrives in 90 minutes, replied Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's propulsion specialist. "The launch window is tight. If we miss it, we'll have to wait 16 hours for orbital alignment." Amanda nodded grimly. The Erebus package was humanity's answer to a question they had hoped never to face. How do you kill something in space when you can't get there yourself? The answer was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. You don't go to space, you send space to your target. Meanwhile, Marcus Vasquez stood in the facility's armory, examining equipment that most governments would deny existed. The quartermaster, a grizzled ex-Navy SEAL named Rodriguez, watched with professional interest as Marcus selected his tools. "Never seen gear like this before," Rodriguez admitted, holding up what looked like a standard tactical knife. "The blade's some kind of metamaterial, cuts through anything up to titanium like butter. And this..." He gestured to a device the size of a smartphone. "Personal gravity manipulator. Still experimental, but the eggheads say it can make you stick to any surface or go completely weightless." Marcus tested the knife's balance, then slid it into a specially designed sheath. "How long until launch?" 73 minutes, Rodriguez replied. "You sure about this zero?" "No one's ever tried anything like this before." Marcus looked up, his mask reflecting the armory's harsh fluorescent lights. "Someone took my sister." Distance is irrelevant. Rodriguez had served with some tough soldiers in his time, but something in Zero's voice made his spine tingle. This wasn't just determination. It was a promise written in blood. In the launch bay, technicians swarmed over a craft that looked like no spaceship ever built. The Prometheus was less vessel than weapon, its hull bristling with sensors and weapon systems that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. At its heart was an engine that bent the laws of physics into pretzels. Not true faster-than-light travel, but something close enough to matter. Captain Lisa Chen, no relation to Elena's research partner, ran through her final checks. She had been handpicked for this mission because she was the only pilot on Earth who had trained on theoretical interstellar combat scenarios. The fact that those scenarios were now becoming reality made her stomach churn. "Erebus packages loaded and secured," her weapons officer reported. "All systems showing green." Lisa nodded, trying not to think about what would happen if they actually had to use their primary weapon. The Erebus package was beautiful in its theoretical elegance and horrifying in its practical application. It would create a localized space-time distortion that would effectively delete anything within a 5-kilometer radius from existence. Not destroy, delete. The matter would simply cease to be as if it had never existed in the first place. The only problem was that using it would probably kill everyone aboard the Prometheus, too. On the Dominion's edge, Elena had been moved to what Kale
7 called the preparation chamber. The room was filled with equipment that belonged in a nightmare. Neural interface systems, consciousness mapping devices, machines whose purpose she didn't want to understand.
The procedure is quite fascinating, Kale. 7 explained as he calibrated one of his instruments. We will map your complete neural pattern, then transfer your consciousness into our databanks. Your mind will live forever, in a sense, contributing to our collective knowledge. And my body? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Will be disposed of efficiently.
There is no pain. Your neural pathways will be severed at the moment of transfer. Elena closed her eyes, fighting down panic.
She thought of Marcus, probably worried sick by now. He would be looking for her, she knew.
Marcus never gave up on family. But how could anyone find her here, wherever here was?
Beginning preliminary neural mapping, Kale 7 announced. A helmet-like device descended from the ceiling, bristling with sensors and neural probes. As it settled over her head, Elena felt a strange tingling sensation, as if something was reading her thoughts. Images flashed through her mind, childhood memories, academic achievements, quiet moments with Marcus. But then something else surfaced. Memories that weren't quite hers. Stories Marcus had told her when she was young. Tales, he claimed, were fiction but spoke with such detail that she sometimes wondered. Stories about a man who hunted monsters in the dark, a figure who appeared when evil thought itself safe, who moved through shadows like he was born to them. Marcus had always laughed when she asked if the stories were real, but now, with alien machinery probing her mind, those tales felt like prophecies. Curious, Kale, 7 murmured, studying the readouts. Your neural patterns show unusual resilience. There are memory structures here that seem reinforced, almost as if someone trained you to resist mental intrusion. Elena's eyes snapped open. She remembered now. Marcus teaching her meditation techniques when she was a teenager, claiming they would help with her studies. But the exercises had always seemed too advanced, too specific. Memory compartmentalization, emotional regulation, mental barriers. Marcus had trained her without her knowing, prepared her for a situation he hoped would never come. In the Nevada desert, the Prometheus lifted off with a sound like reality tearing. The ship's experimental drive engaged, bending space around it in ways that made nearby observers nauseous. Within seconds, it had vanished into the star-filled void, carrying humanity's deadliest secret toward an enemy that had no idea what was coming. Marcus strapped himself into the ship's passenger compartment, surrounded by enough firepower to level a city block. But weapons were only part of his plan. The real advantage would come from something the aliens couldn't possibly anticipate: human unpredictability. The Zephyrians were an ancient race, their society built on order and scientific method. They approached problems systematically, following protocols that had served them for millennia. It was a strength that had made them masters of the galaxy. It was also a weakness that Marcus intended to exploit. Contact in 18 hours, Captain Chen announced over the comm system. The alien ship is maintaining a steady course toward what our astronomers think is their home system. We should intercept them just outside Jupiter's orbit. Marcus checked his equipment one final time. Everything was secure, from the metamaterial weapons to the gravity manipulator to a dozen other devices that existed only in the fevered dreams of military engineers. But his most important tool was something no laboratory could create: 30 years of experience hunting things that thought they couldn't be caught. On the Dominion's edge, Commander Thex 9 received an alert from his sensor array. A small object was approaching from the direction of Earth, moving at speeds that should have been impossible for human technology. Analysis, he requested from his navigation officer. Unknown craft, approximately 40 meters in length, came the reply. Drive signature is unfamiliar, but the energy output is minimal. Probably a probe or automated survey vessel. Thex 9 dismissed the contact as irrelevant. Human space technology was primitive, barely capable of reaching their own moon with any reliability. Whatever they had launched was probably some desperate attempt to communicate, a futile gesture from a species that didn't understand how outclassed they were. He had no way of knowing that the approaching ship carried something far more dangerous than advanced technology. It carried a legend with a personal grudge. In the preparation chamber, Elena endured another round of neural scanning. But this time, she was ready. Marcus's childhood games had taught her how to compartmentalize her thoughts, how to build mental walls that could withstand interrogation. SKL? 7's machines probed her mind. She fed them surface memories while keeping her deepest thoughts locked away. Subject shows increased resistance to neural mapping. Kale, 7 reported to Tex 9. This is unexpected for a human civilian. Increase the probe intensity. Dex 9 ordered. We cannot afford delays. The Science Council expects our return within the lunar cycle. Elena bit back a scream as the neural probes intensified, but behind her mental barriers she held on to one thought like a prayer. Marcus was coming. Somehow, someway, her brother was coming for her. She just had to survive long enough for him to find her. Aboard the Prometheus, Marcus studied the intelligence reports Director Harrison had provided. The Zephyrians were methodical, logical, predictable in their approach to conquest. They had been abducting specimens from primitive worlds for centuries, their protocols refined through repetition, but they had never encountered anything like Earth's apex predator. Marcus smiled behind his mask, an expression that would have chilled the blood of anyone who saw it. The aliens thought they were hunters, but they were about to discover the difference between predator and prey. The hunt was about to begin. In the depths of space, two ships continued their deadly convergence. One carried specimens and scientific equipment, its crew confident in their superiority. The other carried a single passenger, who had spent 3 decades learning how to kill things that couldn't be killed. The Zephyrians had made their first mistake when they took Elena. They were about to make their last mistake when they underestimated her brother. As the Prometheus accelerated toward its target, Marcus began his final preparations. Soon, the most feared assassin in human history would introduce himself to a species that had never known fear. The galaxy was about to learn why humans called him Zero. The Prometheus drifted silently through the void between Mars and Jupiter, its engines cold, its hull configured to absorb rather than reflect sensor sweeps. Captain Lisa Chen watched her displays with practiced calm, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the command chair's armrests. Target acquired, her sensor officer whispered as if speaking too loudly might alert their prey. Alien vessel bearing 27 Mark IV. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers. Marcus floated in the ship's cargo bay, making final adjustments to his equipment in zero gravity. The gravity manipulator was secured to his belt alongside weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. His suit was a marvel of engineering. Self-sealing, radiation-resistant, equipped with enough life support for 6 hours of operation in hard vacuum. He would need far less than that. Zero, this is Control. Captain Chen's voice crackled through his comm system. We're in position. The alien ship shows no signs of detecting us. How do you want to play this? Marcus tested the seal on his helmet one final time. Standard insertion protocol. Get me within 500 meters, then pull back to minimum safe distance. And if things go wrong? Marcus activated the weapon systems on his suit, watching his status lights turn green across his heads-up display. They already went wrong when they took Elena. On the Dominion's edge, Commander Thex 9 monitored the final preparations for consciousness transfer. The human female had proven remarkably resistant to neural mapping, but Kale 7 assured him that the procedure could still proceed. The data they gathered would be incomplete, but valuable nonetheless. Subject is secured in the transfer chamber, Kale 7 reported. Beginning final systems check. Elena lay strapped to a table that looked more like an altar than medical equipment. The neural interface helmet had been replaced by an array of devices that seemed designed to peer directly into her soul. Despite her terror, she forced herself to remain calm. Marcus had taught her that panic was the enemy of survival. The process will take approximately 1 standard time unit, KL7, explained with the detached interest of a scientist dissecting an interesting specimen. During the initial phase, you may experience disorientation as your neural patterns are mapped and digitized. The final phase, consciousness extraction, is instantaneous. Elena said nothing, conserving her strength for whatever was coming. But deep in her mind, behind walls that Marcus had helped her build, she held on to hope like a flame in darkness. The Prometheus adjusted its trajectory with tiny puffs from maneuvering thrusters, sliding through space like a shark stalking prey. Marcus made his way to the airlock, his magnetic boots clanking softly against the deck plating. Insertion in 60 seconds, Captain Chen announced. Zero, are you sure about this? We could try the Erebus package first. Soften them up.
No, Marcus replied firmly.
Elena's on that ship. Surgical approach only. Captain Chen nodded, though he couldn't see it. She had read Zero's file, or what little of it existed in official records. The man had infiltrated terrorist compounds, eliminated war criminals in heavily fortified bunkers, vanished entire criminal organizations without leaving a trace. If anyone could pull off the impossible, it was him. But this was different. This wasn't a human enemy operating by human rules. This was an alien species with technology centuries beyond Earth's capability, and they were light years from any possible backup.
30 seconds to insertion, she announced. Marcus activated his suit's stealth systems, watching as his reflection in the airlock's polished surfaces began to shimmer and fade. The adaptive camouflage wasn't perfect, but combined with the vacuum of space and his own skills, it should be enough to get him aboard the alien vessel undetected. 10 seconds. The Prometheus shuddered slightly as its magnetic grappling system engaged, locking onto the alien ship's hull with forces measured in tons per square inch.
To the Zephyrians, it would register as nothing more than a micrometeorite impact, if they noticed it at all. Go. The airlock cycled, and Marcus stepped into the void. Space was silent, cold, and utterly indifferent to human ambition. But as Marcus used his suit's thrusters to navigate toward the alien hull, he felt no fear. He had trained for hostile environments his entire career. The fact that this one happened to be airless was merely another tactical consideration. The alien ship's hull was smooth, organic-looking, covered in what appeared to be a metallic skin that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. Marcus activated his suit's analysis programs, watching as they identified potential entry points. A maintenance port near what appeared to be a sensor array showed promise, large enough for human entry, probably leading to internal service corridors. He attached a small device to the port's access panel and waited as it worked to decode the alien security protocols. The device had been designed by the best minds in human intelligence, but it was still operating on guesswork and theoretical models of alien technology. After 30 seconds that felt like hours, the port cycled open. Marcus slipped inside, finding himself in a corridor that was clearly not designed for creatures of his size. The ceiling was too low, the walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. But there was atmosphere. His suit's sensors detected a breathable mixture of gases, though with trace elements that would probably be toxic over extended periods. He moved deeper into the ship, following schematics that his suit's computer had compiled from sensor data.
Elena's life signs were somewhere in the ship's central section, probably in whatever passed for their laboratory or medical bay. As he moved through the alien corridors, Marcus allowed himself a moment of amazement.
He was inside an honest-to-God alien spaceship, surrounded by technology that would revolutionize human understanding of physics. Under other circumstances, he might have been interested in the scientific implications. Right now, all he cared about was getting his sister back. In the transfer chamber, Alina felt the machines beginning their work. There was no pain yet, but she could sense something probing at the edges of her consciousness, trying to map the neural pathways that made her who she was. Fascinating. Kale, 7 murmured, studying his displays. Human consciousness appears to have a recursive structure we hadn't anticipated. The mapping process is taking longer than expected. Elena forced herself to remain still, but inside her mind she was fighting. Marcus had taught her meditation techniques that seemed simple enough. Visualization exercises, breathing patterns, mental compartmentalization. Now she understood their true purpose. Each technique was a weapon, designed to protect her mind from exactly this kind of assault. She visualized walls of steel around her deepest memories, barriers that the alien machines couldn't penetrate. Behind those walls, she held the most important parts of herself, her love for her family, her determination to survive, her absolute faith that Marcus would come for her. The machines pressed harder against her defenses, but Elena had been trained by Earth's most effective predator. She would not break easily. Marcus found the first Zephyrian guard at an intersection of corridors. The alien stood nearly 7 feet tall with elongated limbs and skin that had a faint blue tint under the ship's lighting. It carried what was obviously a weapon, though its design was unlike anything in human arsenals. The guard never knew Marcus was there. The metamaterial knife slid between what Marcus hoped were vital organs, and the alien dropped without a sound. Marcus caught the body, lowering it gently to the deck. His suit's computer analyzed the alien's weapon, identifying its power source and basic operating principles. Interesting, but not immediately useful. Marcus preferred tools he understood completely. He continued deeper into the ship, leaving no trace of his passage except for the occasional guard who would wake up with gaps in their memory, if they woke up at all. Marcus had spent decades perfecting the art of moving through hostile territory, and alien architecture was just another variable in a familiar equation. The ship's central section was more heavily guarded, but the aliens were watching for external threats, not intruders who were already aboard. Marcus slipped past sensor arrays and automated defenses with techniques that had been perfected in the shadows of Earth's most dangerous places. Finally, he found her. Through a reinforced viewing port, Marcus could see Elena strapped to some kind of medical table, surrounded by alien machinery that hummed with malevolent purpose. The sight of his sister, the little girl he had protected and raised after their parents died,
in the hands of creatures who saw her as nothing more than a test subject, filled him with a rage that threatened to overwhelm his professional detachment. Marcus forced himself to remain calm. Rage was a tool, but like all tools, it had to be used precisely. He studied the chamber's layout, identifying 3 guards, multiple sensor systems, and what appeared to be automated defensive measures. Under normal circumstances, this would be a challenging but manageable infiltration scenario.
These weren't normal circumstances. Marcus activated the gravity manipulator, feeling his weight disappear as the device created a localized field that canceled Earth's gravitational influence. He dropped through a maintenance shaft, approaching the chamber from an angle the designers had never anticipated. The first guard died before he could raise an alarm. The second managed to reach for his weapon before Marcus's knife found his throat. The third actually got off a shot, but his energy blast passed harmlessly through the space where Marcus had been a heartbeat earlier.
Kale 7 spun around as his guards collapsed, his 6-fingered hands reaching for an emergency communicator. He never touched it. Marcus appeared beside him like a shadow given substance, one hand covering the alien's mouth while the other pressed the metamaterial blade against his throat.
"You're going to shut down the machines," Marcus whispered, his voice carrying the promise of death. "You're going to release my sister.
And if you're very, very careful about how you do it, I might let you live long enough to regret taking her."
Kale.
7's eyes widened as he got his first clear look at the intruder. The human was smaller than a Zephyrian, but there was something in his posture, his movements, that spoke of violence held in perfect check. The alien had spent his life studying predatory species, and every instinct he possessed was screaming that he was facing an apex predator. With trembling hands, Kale 7 began shutting down the consciousness transfer apparatus. Elena felt the pressure on her mind recede as the machines powered down. She opened her eyes to see a figure in black tactical gear standing over one of her captors, and for a moment she thought she was hallucinating. Then she recognized the way he moved, the protective stance he always took when she was in danger.
"Marcus," she whispered, "I'm here, Elena. You're safe now." But even as he spoke, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Commander Fex," 9's voice echoed from hidden speakers, speaking in the clicking Zephyrian language that Marcus's suit computer was already beginning to translate. "Intruder alert. Seal all sections. Activate internal defenses."
Marcus helped Elena sit up, quickly checking her for injuries. She seemed physically unharmed, though he could see the strain of her ordeal in her eyes.
"Can you move?" he asked. Elena nodded, accepting his help to stand.
"How did you get here? How did you even find me?" "Questions later, escape now," Marcus replied, handing her a breathing mask from his emergency kit.
The ship's about to depressurize. They made it to the corridor as blast doors began sealing throughout the ship. Marcus had planned for this contingency. Separation was a standard defensive tactic, but it also created opportunities for someone who understood how to exploit chaos.
The gravity manipulator allowed them to move through the ship's superstructure itself, passing through maintenance shafts and service corridors that the aliens were too large to follow. Behind them, Marcus could hear search teams coordinating their efforts, but they were looking for intruders in the wrong places.
"Where are we going?" Elena asked as they crawled through a conduit barely wide enough for human shoulders. "Home," Marcus replied simply. They reached the hull breach Marcus had created during his entry, but the opening had been automatically sealed by the ship's damage control systems.
No problem. Marcus attached a small explosive charge to the patch, then activated his suit's magnetic anchoring system.
"Hold on," he told Elena.
The charge detonated with barely a whisper in the vacuum of space, but it was enough to rupture the emergency seal. Atmosphere rushed out into the void, carrying loose debris and anything not firmly secured.
Marcus and Elena rode the escaping air into space, his suit's thrusters firing to correct their trajectory toward the waiting Prometheus. Behind them, the Dominion's edge began to turn, its weapons systems coming online as Commander Thex
9 finally understood what had happened. "Control, this is 0, Marcus transmitted. "Package secured. Request immediate extraction. Copy that, 0. Coming about now." The Prometheus emerged from stealth, its engines flaring as it accelerated toward them. But the alien ship was faster, more maneuverable. Energy beams lanced through space, missing the human vessel by meters. "They're gaining," Captain Chen reported. "We can't outrun them." Marcus watched the tactical display, calculating distances and intercept vectors. The alien ship was indeed faster, and its weapons had longer range. In a straight chase, the Prometheus wouldn't make it. "Activate the Erebus package," Marcus ordered.
"Sir, we're still within the blast radius."
"The theoretical calculations are about to become practical experience. Do it." Captain Chen hesitated for one heartbeat, then began the activation sequence that would either save them or erase them from existence. Deep in the Prometheus's armored hull, exotic matter began to cascade through carefully controlled reactions. Space-time itself began to bend. Commander Thex, 9, watched in horror as reality twisted around the human ship. His sensors registered gravitational anomalies that should have been impossible, energy readings that broke every law of physics he understood. The Dominion's edge had been pursuing prey. Suddenly, it found itself being hunted.
The Erebus package detonated in a flash of light that was visible from 3 planets. When the sensors cleared, the alien ship was simply gone, not destroyed, not scattered into debris, but erased as if it had never existed.
The Prometheus tumbled through space, its hull cracked, its systems failing, but it held together long enough for rescue ships from Earth to reach them, long enough for Marcus and Elena to return home.
In the debriefing room at Area 52, Director Harrison listened to Marcus's report with a mixture of awe and terror. "So they're still out there," Harrison said. "Other ships, other aliens who think humans are easy prey." Marcus removed his mask for the first time in days, revealing a face that looked older than its years but with eyes that burned with quiet intensity. "Let them come," he said simply. "They took something from my family. Now they know the price." Elena squeezed her brother's hand, understanding finally why the bedtime stories had felt so real, why Marcus's games had been so sophisticated. Her brother wasn't just a man, he was a legend, Earth's answer to the darkness that waited between the stars. The Zephyrians had thought they were conducting a simple abduction. Instead, they had taught the galaxy that humanity had teeth, and sometimes those teeth belonged to something that even monsters learned to fear. In the weeks that followed, alien activity around Earth dropped to zero. Word had somehow spread through the galactic community about the species that had developed the ability to erase entire ships from existence, about the predators who hunted in the dark between worlds. But Marcus Vasquez, Operative Zero, had already returned to his quiet apartment in Berlin, content to let others deal with the political implications of first contact. He had what he came for. His sister was safe, and the universe had learned an important lesson. Some sheep, it turned out, were protected by wolves so dangerous that even the darkness feared their howl. The galaxy was welcome to test that lesson again, whenever it felt brave enough. Marcus would be waiting.